Are you looking for the best 2024 NFL Week 10 DFS advice around? Then get ready for the live Week 10 IDP Plus DFS podcast. Welcome in, everybody. I'm Joel Worth at the Joel Worth on Twitter and Blue Sky, and my buddy Jameson Hutchinson is back this week. Glad to have him back. Jameson, how you doing, my man?
I'm doing good. Sorry for missing last week, but just like most people in the world, work got in the way. But I'm here. We got a very goofy DFS slate. We have the slobber knocker across the pond with the Giants and the Panthers. My thoughts and prayers go out to anybody who is over there and paid money to watch that out of all the teams in the world. But other than that, doing good. A lot to get into and a really weird, one of the more uglier DFS slates in quite some time, but we're going to make this happen. But I appreciate it. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm a little under the weather, but we're hanging in there. So I'm going to let you do the heavy lifting today. We missed you last week. Glad to have you back. Definitely a weird slate. We got 4 teams on bye: the Browns, Packers, Raiders, and Seahawks. I think that's really affecting things. Pricing is really tight. Big picture, there's only one game in the main slate proper with an over 46.5. So this is a tough week for DFS. So everyone needs all the help they can get. So let's get to it. We're going to start with game number 1 on the early slate. That's Atlanta at New Orleans. That game is 46.5 over under. Atlanta's a 3.5 point road favorite, implied total of 25 for them. 21.5 for the decimated New Orleans Saints. No Chris Olave, no Rashid Shaheed, no really anything for them. So what are you thinking in this game? What do you got going on?
It's a goofy one. We've got Alvin Kamara, who's going to end up being pretty much chalk on both sides. He ends up being a little bit pricier. Over on FanDuel, he's 8,500, and then over on DraftKings, he ends up getting pretty pricey too. I know, just talking about the slate overall, he's 8,100 over on DraftKings. Wide receivers are all decimated by injury, so that makes things like really tough to begin with. And then this game's kind of goofy. Dennis Allen gets fired, so we've got like the new head coach narrative, and then going on with the rest of the stuff. It's really like Bijan in this matchup. I think he sets up really nicely. Alvin Kamara, he's going to be, for as far as cash games go, he's probably a guy you want to lock in your lineup. He had 30 points last week, and that was even without a touchdown. But the one way I do want to go about this, really like Kirk Cousins in this matchup. I know he's got Drake London, he's got Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts, last time they faced New Orleans, had 0 points, but he's quietly gotten there ever since I ranted about a month ago about the Falcons being overrated. All they've done is smash. So it's a great spot for him. Well, last week we had a little bit of Taysom Hill week. I'm worried that we might have that again as kind of the last man standing. So as far as cash games goes, Alvin Kamara is going to be in your lineup for most people. And then for the rest of it, I've tried to sim some Atlanta stuff. It kind of holds up pretty well. Just like I talked about earlier, these wide receivers on the slate, there's not very many of them. And then it's either you're paying up top and don't have any money left, or you're just going to punt at wide receivers. So Drake London and Kyle Pitts kind of fit there. Kirk Cousins is underpriced. So I've leaned into that and kind of building around that for a couple lineups. But that's the way I'm going to go in tournaments this week, is kind of lean into Kirk Cousins. He's had some of these ceiling games.
Man, tight end is beat up this week with no Njoku, no Tucker Kraft, no Brock Bowers, obviously.
Yep.
I think Taysom Hill's in play. I think he has to be, just because of the volume he's going to get. Tight end is really tough this week. If you don't want to pay up, there's really not a lot of good options. So it just because of the kind of those guys not being there at the top really kind of just pushes the next tier guys down. So I think that Taysom Hill, Hunter Henry, we'll talk about later. That's If you want to pay, that's about as far as you can really go down in the tight end pricing.
Yeah, especially on DraftKings. I mean, Taysom Hill's 4K. Hunter Henry, another guy, I'm glad you brought him up. I like a lot as a punt tight end. He ends up being 3,900. So it's, this is not the slate to pay up for tight end. You got Travis Kelce, 6K, George Kittle, 5,800. It just, like I said, there's no value as far as running backs go. I know Brian Robinson's out, but Austin Eckler he's not cheap. So that's not like the salary relief that you're hoping. Like I talked about earlier, these wide receivers are just decimated, and you're either paying up for one or you're just going to punt the position. But like I said, kind of building around my thought process on this slate was try to get like a lower end quarterback, hopefully hit on a stack, and then just kind of build around the higher end running backs around it. So that's uh that's the plan for me. Like I said, I've simmed some Kirk Cousins stuff and it ends up working out pretty decent. Uh, kind of interested on Bijan Robinson and his ownership. He ends up being pretty pricey, but I mean, 7,700 over on DraftKings. He's right in there with Christian McCaffrey, Brees Hall, Jonathan Taylor, those kind of guys. I like Bijan too. He's probably a cash game play too. The way he's played the last couple weeks, he can kind of set up. But I always worry these coaches get fired like 1 or 2 weeks. A team actually cares. Like it seemed like nobody liked Dennis Allen. That seemed pretty evident. But like I said, that's
Yeah.
not on that game. But it's I'm going to lean into Atlanta's offense a little bit here.
Yeah, and I do like the receivers. I like to play like slot receivers against New Orleans because they're so bad against the slot typically. But now they traded away Marshawn Lattimore, so like they could just be bad all over in the secondary. So
Yep.
yeah, I like Drake London. I like Darnell Mooney. I don't mind like Ray McLeod is like a super deep. If he's going to get some slot snaps, is like a super deep kind of punt play. But he's just not that cheap, right? He's at 59 on FanDuel. I'd like him to be cheaper than that, but I don't mind him as a super punt play either.
No, 4,300 over on
Yeah,
DraftKings.
he's pretty
So
cheap on DraftKings.
it's like I said, this whole slate's pretty tough, but well,
Yeah,
it gets very ugly very quick. I'll
yeah.
say that.
Pricing is really tight, and there's no Cedric Tillman to kind of bail us out and give us that free square this week. So,
No.
all right, let's move on to the next game. That is New England at Chicago. The Patriots are 6-point road underdogs, a 38.5 point total. That is the lowest total of the main slate today. So 16.25 implied total for New England, 22.25 for Chicago. Feels like this is a spot for defenses. What do you think?
Yeah, especially over on FanDuel, New England ends up being one of the cheapest defenses, and you need it. I mean, I don't think there's much way to pay up for defense. I'm kind of interested in Drake May. Trust me, I know Chicago's defense is good. Drake May has quietly kind of gotten there. We talked about Henry. He's a guy, a punt tight end that it seems like both of us are on this week. That's been his main target. I mean, Drake May's floor has been really about 15, 20 points. And, you know, the way that this quarterback slate is, we got Hurts, Allen, Daniels up at the top, and then like the rest of it, just these group of guys who just kind of If you can build around 5,800 over on DraftKings for Drake May, and then over on FanDuel, if I can type, he's 6,800, so he ends up in like that low end 7K range. Demario Douglas was the other guy. If you were trying to absolutely punt at wide receiver, he's fine. I don't want to sit there and tout him. Chicago stuff is ugly. I mean, Shane Waldron should be put in a federal prison for what he's done to this offense. It is terrible. The one thing I will say, DeAndre Swift has gotten like 17 carries. Seems like over each game for the last month. He ends up in that mid-price running back realm that can kind of get there. If I had to pick a Chicago wide receiver, I'd just go back to Rome Odunze. DJ Moore's been very goofy. Keenan Allen not looking good. I don't know if that ship is totally sailed, but it's it's tough. I don't have much to say on Ramondre Stevenson. He's probably a better GPP play if you wanted to pair him with New England's defense. I think New England's defense will be able to get sacks on Caleb Williams. That offensive line for Chicago has been terrible, and I don't think this game's going to be great. But if you think the rest of these games are not going to be great either, if you just kind of punt down to Drake May, hope he gets 15 or 20, and kind of build around that way, I don't hate it. That's kind of been the theme so far on this show.
Yeah, I really agree. I do like Hunter Henry as a punt tight end or a pay down tight end. He's not really a punt; he's a pay down.
Right.
But yeah, I'm okay with both defenses, and I do like if I'm going to start a Bears receiver and kind of go contrarian. I just want the cheapest one, and that's really Odunze. So I don't mind that at all either. Other than that, yeah, I could see it with Swift because New England has just kind of randomly allowed some huge running back games, but every time you think they're going to do that, it's really been it's not like they're getting killed on the ground. So
Right.
I don't mind DeAndre Swift, but he's not someone I'm actively trying to target. All right, let's move on from that game. I think the less it's said about that one, the better. Let's go to Buffalo and Indianapolis. Another 46.5 point total. Buffalo 4 point road favorite. 25.25 implied total for the Bills. 21.25 implied total for Joe Flacco and the Colts, who looked absolutely atrocious on Sunday night. How are you feeling about this one? You think there's a bounce back at home for the Colts, or is it as bad as it looked last week?
I think it's about as bad as it looked. I saw the line was Bills -4 this week. Didn't realize how many injuries they had. I'd still lay the lumber on that. I mean, Josh Allen's played really well. We've talked about Indianapolis defense. I mean, as much as I've talked about Gus Bradley on this podcast, I'll say it here again, going up against Josh Allen. I know Amari Cooper's questionable. It seems like he's got a cast on or something like that. No Keon Coleman, who's been kind of whatever anyways. Khalil Shakir is going to seem like a lot of chalk. If I want to get away from that, Dalton Kincaid, I know he's not been good this year, but just, process of elimination, especially at tight end. I want to play Josh Allen here. I'm not sure if I've got to force, players to go with him, especially if he rushes for 2 touchdowns. We've seen that in his repertoire. So Dalton Kincaid, 4,900 over on DraftKings. And then over on FanDuel, he ends up in this kind of range as well, 6,000. So it's a little tough, especially we talked about Hunter Henry at 5,300. You're getting $700 of savings, which you'll need on
Yeah.
this slate.
Yep.
One guy I do want to talk about, James Cook. We've seen him just demolish. Colts defense, or lack thereof, is just an abomination. Sets up really nicely for him, especially if they get in a game script where I wouldn't be surprised if the Bills just blow them out. Indianapolis on offense has not been able to stay on the field. That has been a huge problem as far as these game environments go, just because they go 3 and out, goes back to Josh Allen. They can't sustain drives. Defense sucks. I think Buffalo blows them out here. Buffalo's been really good, especially defensively. On the other side, I don't think anybody's going to play Jonathan Taylor. If the Colts had a shot, they'd have to run it through him. They haven't ran him as much as they should. Josh Downs ends up getting it's this mid-tier wide receiver. He's a little expensive, but I think he's going to have some ownership to him. 7,100 over on FanDuel, and then on DraftKings, if this loads here in a second, he ends up being 6,200. It's a little pricey. I think he's fine. If you need another punt wide receiver, I'd rather play Alec Pierce than Adonai Mitchell with Michael Pittman out, but that's just me. But I do like Josh Allen. I don't think you have to push it with like 2 pass catchers if you want to stack the game. It gets very pricey, and we've talked about there's not salary savings on this slate, so it just makes it kind of goofy. But if I can fit Josh Allen in, I'd love to play him today.
Yeah, I agree. I think Shakir on full PPR DraftKings makes some sense at $6,000, so I think he'll be fairly chalky there. But yeah, other than James Cook, there's really nobody I really liked in this game. I maybe stack Amari Cooper if you want to get contrarian, because I don't think a lot of people are because of the injury. So if you want to kind of gamble that way in a big tournament, I can see that. But yeah, I think you're right. I think outside of Cook and Allen, there's really not a whole lot that I'm super excited about in this game. I could see Josh Downs getting there. I just can't get that visual of the Colts, just kind of really opening up on Pittsburgh in that one game. What was that, week 3, 4, something like that?
Yep.
But I mean, that was a different scenario, right? You had Anthony Richardson starting the game, then he got hurt, and then Flacco came in. I think the league is caught on to Flacco. So yeah, I'm really hesitant to kind of start any Colts just because I could just see that offense just imploding like it did Sunday night and just not producing really anything. So that's kind of scary, honestly.
No, just real quick, James Cook ends up being 7,800 over on FanDuel. He is in this DeAndre Swift, James Conner, Aaron Jones, who we'll talk about in a little bit. I like James Cook. I'm going to lean into that today. But I feel like picking the right combination of running backs is kind of going to make or break your DFS day.
Yeah, Jones and Cook are the kind of the 2 second-tier guys that I'm leaning on heavily this week. So, all right, let's move on to the next game. That is Denver at Kansas City. Kind of surprising that's an early game when there's only 3 late games, but it is what it is. Denver, a 7.5 point road underdog at KC, 41.5 game total. So 17 implied total for Denver, 24.5 for Kansas City. Saw kind of DeAndre Hopkins come to life, Travis Kelce come to life against a terrible Tampa pass defense, but much stiffer competition in Denver this week. How you feeling about the Chiefs and the Broncos?
I don't love it. DeAndre Hopkins, I'm going to check. He's 6,000 on FanDuel. And if you're playing cash, you're going to the cash window with DeAndre Hopkins. It's not the best matchup for him. I know the Broncos finally kind of got exposed last week. He's 5,300 on DraftKings, by the way. But, I mean, DeAndre Hopkins ended up opening some stuff up for the Chiefs that they desperately needed. I don't love this game. Kareem Hunt might as well be called Kareem the Dream because he is just somehow getting there every single week. If you wanted to correlate him with Chiefs defense, I think that's fine. I don't think I'm just going to be honest. I don't think I'm going to have money to pay up for defense this week. The way I'm playing some stuff. Third highest Chiefs defense over on DraftKings, and they end up being middle of the pack over on FanDuel. I can see a scenario if you want to play Bo Nix by himself. Hope that he rushes, like he just gets Chris Jones just chasing him all day and he gets like 60, 70, 80 yards and trying to go that way. I don't hate it. He's not going to be in my player pool, but outside of that, DeAndre Hopkins will be a cash game play for me. I'll probably, if I can get away from him in tournaments, I will. But if he's somebody that I feel like I have to smash just because of price, I'm fine eating that. The rest of the game, I don't really, not very excited in. Not going to play any Patrick Mahomes. Even if he gets there, then so be it. But Broncos secondary's been good. I don't think DeAndre Hopkins on paper has the best matchup, but at his price and the way he was involved last week, I think he's a must-play in cash. And like I said, I think he's fine in tournaments. He's going to have a lot of ownership, though.
Yeah, I think you really have to ask yourself, like, did the Chiefs come alive last week because they're getting better because of DeAndre Hopkins, or did they just come alive because they played a really terrible Tampa pass defense? I kind of think it's the latter. You mentioned the Broncos coming back to earth last week. That may have been like a look ahead spot to this game. So I'm not going to kind of take that as the new normal for them. I still think they're a good defense. So yeah, I don't love this game kind of at all, and I think that the over under kind of reflects that. I mean, it's kind of weird to have a KC game with a total only under 42 points. So not in love with this game. And you kind of mentioned Bo Nix, but and I get it, maybe wanting to just play him by himself, but he's more expensive than Drake May. He's more expensive than Derek Carr. More expensive than Justin Herbert, who I kind of like this week as a pay down quarterback. Yep. So it's really tough to kind of get him there. Yeah. And Mahomes just not in my pool at all.
No, it's ugly. Like I said, like you said, Bucks defense or lack thereof, this secondary has just been getting torched, and I think that's more of a product of the Chiefs and them finally turning a page.
So speaking of the Tampa Bay defense, they are going to be taking on the San Francisco 49ers, 50.5 point total. So the highest point total of the Sunday games, I should say. Cincinnati, Baltimore was a higher total on Thursday, but this is the highest point total of the game since then. San Francisco, 6.5 point road favorites, 28.5 point implied total. Tampa at 22. A lot to like in this game. How are you attacking the 49ers?
In cash, I think a lot of people are going to go to Brock Purdy. He's 8,100 over on FanDuel, and then DraftKings, he ends up kind of being there too at 6,500. This quarterback slate outside of Hurts, Allen, and Daniels, you were just picking matchups. I know that's not necessarily the best analysis, but Brock Purdy's got a great matchup. Another guy we'll talk about, Aaron Rodgers, is like in this weird player pool of more statue quarterbacks, but I think a lot of people are going to play Brock Purdy's, especially in cash. One guy I want to talk about is Christian McCaffrey. I expect him to go back to what he was last year. I think people are going to be scared to play him a little bit. I'm not. I'm going to try to jam him in where I can because the 49ers do not have time to play around and ease him in. He's already been off half the season. The Rams are getting healthy. Cardinals are leading the division. I don't think they're that great, but they are. I mean, so San Francisco really can't lose this game or take any chances of just like easing him back in. I think he gets a full workload, and I know he's expensive. 10K running back, and he's at, I believe, 9,400 over on FanDuel. So I'll take a little bit of discount. I'm going to play him where I can, especially in tournaments. And then in cash, Brock Purdy is probably going to be my cash quarterback, especially over on FanDuel. And then Deebo Samuel will be kind of interesting because he's got a questionable tag. And Juwan Jennings, we saw his ceiling. He had like a 40-point game. It's been a little while back, but he would be the wide receiver too. And then George Kittle, kind of. I don't think I'm playing George Kittle today. I think Christian McCaffrey takes a lot of that away from him. But on the other side, Baker Mayfield's still slinging it. He's still getting there, even though he's lost all of his weapons. Cade Otton will be chalky, rightfully so. He's gotten just obliterated with targets the last couple weeks now that everybody's gone. So I don't hate like a Baker Mayfield stack. You stack with Cade Otton and bring him back with like Christian McCaffrey. I think that's a little way to get interesting if you think Christian McCaffrey ends up 100 yards, 2 touchdowns. I really like McCaffrey. I'm going to try to jam him in where I can. I know he's expensive. This slate makes it kind of hard, but I think he's too expensive for people to make it happen. And I think people are scared, and I'm trying to capitalize on that.
Yeah, I agree with you on Purdy and Deebo. I think they're going to be pretty chalky, especially in cash. I know I have at least one Purdy lineup, and I've got Deebo in a lot of spots. He's probably going to be my most rostered player this week. I like where he's priced, and I think this is going to be a Deebo game. And I just want to take shots at this Tampa secondary. They are so bad, especially. I remember last year. I think the Niners had a week 9 bye as well, and came off that bye and just obliterated the one on the road and just obliterated Jacksonville, and it was like a 34-3 game. So, yeah, I think this is a good spot for the Niners coming off the bye. I think this could be a very similar scenario, which is kind of why I'm afraid to tackle the Buccaneers, especially with no receivers of notes. It's like, do you really want to trust Cade Otton as the only option in the passing game? Maybe you go to like a Rashad White as a contrarian, like on DK where PPR matters. I could see that, but yeah, Tampa's kind of scary because again, I could see this being a game where the Niners just kind of blow them out, and it just becomes, they're just not in the game, and they just don't put enough points to be relevant in DFS.
Yeah, like I said, it makes sense, and the 49ers have already lost a couple divisional round games, so they really don't have time, like I said, to play around here. So we've seen Kyle Shanahan kind of get little tight in close games or games that they're leading and kind of let them sneak back in. Maybe this is like where the dam finally breaks for Tampa on offense. Just too hard to handle with, Mike Evans out, Chris Godwin out. Baker Mayfield's doing his best to keep it afloat, and he's still, they're chucking it at an unreal pace. And like I said, the running backs are interesting. I don't think I'm going to have Bucky or Rashad White, but if you think the Buccaneers are down, Rashad White will be the passing down back. He gets some, dump offs. That kind of works there too. Get some salary relief. But like I said, Christian McCaffrey will be the big one for me in this game.
Yeah, remember Tampa's on bye next week, so this is your last chance to attack their secondary for a couple weeks. So take advantage while you can. All right, moving on to I think one of the more interesting games of the day is Pittsburgh at Washington. Two kind of teams doing surprisingly well. 45-point total. Pittsburgh a 2.5-point road underdog. Washington implied total is 23.75. Pittsburgh's is 21.25. I think this is a sneaky spot. So how are you attacking this one?
It's definitely popped off the page for me a little bit more than I expected. I think the problem here is both these teams like to run the ball and are pretty good at it. Najee Harris, another guy who I've written off and has done really well ever since then. It's frustrating, but it is what it is. Brian Robinson Jr. is out. Thought Austin Eckler would be a little cheaper. He is not. He is 6,800 over on FanDuel, and then over on DraftKings, I don't think you're getting much salary relief from him either if he shows up. But he'll give that a minute. But as far as this game goes, we've seen Jaden Daniels' ceiling. I know Pittsburgh's defense has been tough, but I think it's pretty interesting. And him, Terry McLaurin, Noah Brown ends up being like one of these punt wide receivers. He's 5,300 over on FanDuel, and then DraftKings, I know he's pretty cheap too. If you want to stack that way, bring it back with, say, Najee Harris, who I don't think is going to have any ownership, or George Pickens, who we've seen get there. He doesn't get much volume, but we've seen Russell Wilson kind of hit these moonshots. And Russell Wilson is another guy that's pretty interesting on this slate. Another guy who I probably need to consider a little bit more of. 5,900 over on DraftKings, and then over on FanDuel, he ends up being 7,500. A little more expensive than I like, but I think there's some points that could be scored in this game. Zach Ertz, I know last week wasn't great, but he's quietly gotten there somehow, some way. If you need to kind of punt at tight end, so I'm with you. I think this game's a little interesting. I'm trying to do some Jaden Daniels stuff. Terry McLaurin has finally gotten there. It's only taken a decade and a good quarterback, but he's finally starting to get there. If you can fit like Jaden Daniels, Terry McLaurin, and bring it back with George Pickens, I think that's fun. The problem with it is it's a little more pricier than you want, and you're going to have to punt elsewhere. Like the only other guy I would think about is Rodriguez, the going to be back up to Austin Eckler. He got some run last time Brian Robinson Jr. was out. That's like more of a large field kind of punt play there. But like I said, this game's interesting. It's pricey, and like we've reiterated, it is very hard to pay up for some guys and then have a decent team around them.
Yeah, this game for me is kind of the pay down running backs that I'm going to this week. And Eckler, who was like 6,800, 5,800, something like that. And then Jalen Warren, who's 5,500 and 5,300. I kind of like him in he's finally healthy, and I think this is probably a game script where Pittsburgh's probably going to have to throw. I don't think they're going to be able to run as much as they would like to. So I kind of like Warren at his price more than I like Najee Harris. And I don't dislike Najee Harris. I just like, I think Warren, I think it's a game script that sets up for this to be a Warren game. So I like being able to pay down for him instead of having to pay up for Najee Harris.
No, I think that's fair. He's finally getting a little bit more workload. Getting 6.9 points last two games. Very nice for Jalen Warren there. But like I said, Najee's
Very
been good.
nice.
I don't think anybody's playing Najee. I know I'm not. I'm his number one hater. So, but like I said, this game's interesting. It just gets a little more expensive, and especially the thought process here. If you're paying up for Jaden Daniels, he's a top 3 quarterback, 8,400 over on FanDuel. Like that, if you're paying up for quarterback, you are taking money elsewhere, and it's just hard to find that money. So that's kind of the problem with that. But I mean, Jaden Daniels has been scoring 20 points like every game this year. 25, 20, 20, 25. Got hurt on the 5, but I mean, it's good. I know Steelers defense has been pretty good, but I like betting on these players, and Jaden Daniels has been really reliable this year.
Yeah, and the one other place that I'm interested in going is Noah Brown as a super cheap pay down. Just because like Pittsburgh's been very good against number 1 receivers, but has struggled against number 2 receivers. And
Yep.
Noah Brown's just kind of the default number 2 receiver. I'm not going to Olamide Zaccheaus. So
No.
if you want a really cheap punt play option for a tournament, I could see, and I do have a couple lineups where I've kind of been forced into sliding Noah Brown in there. I don't hate that. I think he's one of the better pay down receivers this week.
No, last 2 games getting 6 targets.
Yeah.
Against Baltimore, 8 targets. I mean, that's more than you can ever ask for in life for a guy. 5,300 over on FanDuel, 4,300 over on DraftKings. You're going to have to find some of these guys, and you're going to have to hit on them. So
Yep.
it's I like it. Like I said, you could stack them with Jaden Daniels. That's kind of your salary relief at wide receiver if you're playing him and McLaurin. So it's like I said, this game's interesting. Next game's pretty interesting too, I think.
Yeah, before we get there, let's hit up a couple questions. Appreciate everybody checking out the show. JJ, appreciate you checking out the show as always. Our good buddy JJ Winter. Our friend Bob Dole always checks in. We appreciate that. Devontae Smith, London, Mooney, Addison, Pickens, RB, Barkley, Henry, Mason, and CMC. Already have Barkley and Henry in, but I need 2 wide receivers and a flex and a pull PPR.
So I would already have Barkley. So CMC would be one. I think he is a lock. I'm gonna go. I got 3 as far as the wide receivers go, and I guess we will lock them down. Devontae Smith, Drake London, and I'm very high on Jordan Addison this week. So it's kind of taking a shot here. I don't know if you agree with that or if any of these guys stick out before we break it down.
I like all these guys. I like
Yeah.
Devonta Smith this week. I like who mentioned earlier. I like both London and Mooney this week. And I do like Jordan Addison a lot. We're going to talk about him in a second. He's one of my favorite pay down-ish receivers this week.
Yeah.
So Pickens, I guess, would be the easy one that I'm not taking.
Yep.
You need two receivers. I would say one of the Atlanta guys and Devonta Smith, but yeah, it's tough to not take Addison because I like him a lot this week. And yeah, I agree with you. CMC's got to be the running back and the flex.
You're gonna add CMC to that, and you'll win your week, and you can thank us later for that. I like Devonta Smith. He's gotten like 15 points the last 2 games. The problem is they got Cooper Rush, and are they going to have to push it?
Yeah,
we'll get to that here
fair.
in a little bit.
That's a fair point.
London is battling injury. He seems like he's fine. Ah, man. I wish I had these problems in life. I'm going to go. Boy.
No
I'm
doubt.
going to go. Oh, man. I want to play Jordan Addison. That's probably
Okay.
not great. I want to play Addison, and then between London and Smith, I'd say probably Devonta Smith. So if
London's a bit dinged up, so I get it. Yep.
if you're shooting for like a safe floor, it's probably Smith and London. I mean, you already got CMC and Barkley and Henry. I
Yeah.
mean, life can't be that bad for you, Bob. So, but if you're shooting for upside, I think I'll just spoil it here. Jordan Addison's going to be one of my flag plants this week. I really think he's going to have an awesome game. So if you're shooting for upside, add Jordan Addison.
Yeah, I like that. And yeah, I don't think there's really any wrong answers here, to be honest.
That's a great problem to have, Bob.
Exactly. So Woolly Mammoth joining us today. Appreciate that. Tyrone's thinking it up. I've got the game on, but haven't really been paying attention, so haven't really seen. That's kind of disappointing. Big Tyrone Tracy fan. And then we had a question from the Mammoth himself. Do you think Kamara gets the rushing over? I'm thinking taking him over rush receiver yards, probably a negative game script. Maybe Bijan over on rushing. What do you think?
Definitely over on Bijan. I think Bijan smashes today. They have finally started to unleash the beast and sets up nicely. I would say yes to Kamara as well. They just don't have anybody left, and if that offense is going to move at all, it's going to be through Kamara and Taysom Hill. Unfortunately, that's all they got left. So it's frustrating, but yeah, I would say the over on both.
Yeah, I definitely agree on Bijan. Without knowing, I don't have the number in front of me what their total is. I think you almost have to take the over on Kamara just because, like you said, he's all they've got. Like he and Taysom Hill is like that's the entire offense. Where else are you going? Like Cedric Wilson, MVS.
Right.
There's just nothing else there. So
I would
really disappointing outcome for the Saints. But I think Kamara's it probably benefits Kamara just because the volume is going to be massive by default.
Yeah. I would say rushing and receiving yards is a little more safer than just the rushing yards because a lot of his production comes from the receiving portion of the program. So, but it's like I said, I would take the over on both, especially Bijan. I like him a lot today.
Agree with that. All right, last game of the early afternoon slate is Minnesota and Jacksonville. I agree with you. I think this is one of the sneaky high upside games of the week. 43-point total for the Vikings at Jacksonville, 6.5-point road favorite, Minnesota Vikings. So an implied total of 24.75 for the Vikings, 18.25 for Jacksonville. Even with Mac Jones, their implied total is that high. I would like to take the Jacksonville team under this week, but a lot to like on the Minnesota side. So let's start there.
Yeah, I love Jordan Addison today. I know Justin Jefferson is one of one, but Jacksonville is quietly kind of taking care of the wide receiver one. It's the wide receiver two that has given them fits on this defense all year long. So yards per route run, they have allowed the most to cover two, and Jordan Addison has ran the most yards and against cover two, and that sets up for a really nice matchup. I've totally butchered that, but you get the point. He sets up really well. the Vikings are going to throw to win and then whatever that phrase is, I'm butchering that one too, and then run to whatever. Get out to a lead and then run to win the game.
There you
Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones is going to be chalk. He's got no other competition. Cam Akers is kind of there. Ty Chandler is, I think, all but dead at this point. And
non-existent.
yeah, and I think if you're going to win some tournaments, this pocket of mid-tier wide receivers, him, Jameson Williams, if you're playing on FanDuel, Lad McConkey, Khalil Shakir, you're going to end up having one of these guys in your lineup, and you're going to hope that one of these guys breaks the slate. And that my bet is going to be on Jordan Addison today to do that. We got McCorkle in for Jacksonville. I think that totally obliterates Jacksonville. Like Brian Thomas Jr., he's already hurt. Seems like Trevor Lawrence is going to be out for the year. It's that sucks. Feels like I've lost another one of my people with Brian Thomas Jr. Can't play him. If McCorkle dumps it off to Travis Etienne, especially over on DraftKings, would be the play here because I don't think these guys are going to score many touchdowns. But it's interesting. Kind of get away from that. Evan Ingram is a guy I'm not really playing. Christian Kirk's out for the year. It just Trevor Lawrence was playing this game would have been a lot more fun as far as the back and forth. But Sam Darnold will not have as much ownership as Brock Purdy, but I think he'll quietly kind of get there. It gets very expensive to play him, Addison, and Justin Jefferson. And then we haven't even talked about TJ Hawkinson, who seems like he's still being eased in. My problem is I'm not sure that Minnesota will have to necessarily push it. So hopefully they get out to a lead quick and it goes through Jordan Addison here, who I think just ends up having a monster game.
I would like to play Evan Ingram if he were cheaper, but he's not. And like we've said over and over, it's really tough to pay up at tight end. Like on FanDuel, I get it because he's the same price as Taysom Hill, basically. So that's okay. But I'd still rather kind of pay down. He's 6,200 on FanDuel. I'd rather just go down to Hunter Henry and save $900.
Yep.
So, especially if Trevor Lawrence were playing and I had a little bit more confidence in this offense actually being able to put up points, I would kind of be in on Ingram. But like, I think this is a defense in Minnesota that, we've seen they come out early, they get hot early, and then with the blitzing, you don't know where they're coming from. But then teams kind of figure them out. But now you got a situation where you got Mac Jones making his first start of the year, and it's against a defense that's going to be just coming at him from all angles. I'm like I said, I'm terrified. This may be a 3-point game for Jacksonville. So I do like betting the Jacksonville team under, but yeah, so there's not much. I agree with you 100%. I love Jordan Addison this week, especially Jacksonville's a very heavy man team, as we talked about before. When you're playing against a man team, usually your targets really consolidate around your top kind of two options. And I think, with TJ Hawkinson coming back from the injury, I think Addison is the number two option. And he's getting healthy, right? I think he's looked a lot better the last couple of weeks. So I think that ankle injury is behind him that he suffered in week one. So I think he's their clear number two target right now. And yeah, I do like him quite a bit. I also like Aaron Jones quite a bit, just because I think you're right. I think he's just going to be the guy that they use to kind of salt away this game in the second half.
Yeah, his workload has been awesome this year. And we thought that coming into the season, he might split a little bit of time with Ty Chandler. Like I said, Ty Chandler is about 6 feet under at this point. They brought in Cam Akers, who's been okay, but I mean, this workload for Aaron Jones, he's going to probably be in your cash lineup. In tournaments, I would like to get different at running back. But I mean, you see a scenario, he ends up getting 2 touchdowns. There's nobody else on the slate at running back that really breaks it and kind of need Aaron Jones to get there. So, and I don't mind on the slate like this. I don't mind playing Aaron Jones with one of the pass catchers. I know that sounds a little goofy, but I don't hate it with as small as slate as it is. If Minnesota offense only goes through Addison and Aaron Jones, say touchdown wise, like I don't hate it with the lack of options. But like I said, both of us are on Jordan Addison today. Sets up really nice. If you could pay up for Justin Jefferson, that's awesome. But I'd rather pay up at running back, and it just gets very tough very quick. Like it's very hard to stack Darnold, Addison, and Justin Jefferson without the rest of your lineup just tanking.
I was going to say I did create a Vikings onslaught lineup this morning. I do like Darnold at his price, and if I do that, then yeah, I want to load up on Jefferson and Addison. So yeah, it's a tough lineup to make, but you can do it. It's tournament only, really. I'm
Yep.
not going to play that in the cash, but yeah, I want to have some access because I could see this game just getting completely out of hand. And another thing, just I want to bring up real quick, like on the best ball side this week, like this is a two-player slate, right? It's Saquon Barkley and Justin Jefferson, and everything else is kind of secondary to that. Um, in my best ball drafts this week, I've gotten very few number one and number two picks. So yeah, I've been all my picks have been in the back end of the draft. So to counteract that in DFS, I'm starting Saquon Barkley or Justin Jefferson or both in all my lineups. So
Yep.
if you're someone who plays best ball and DFS like I do, that's kind of a way. If you feel like your exposures are just really limited to the top guys on the slate in best ball, just make sure you're loading up on them in DFS.
Yeah, that's a great point too. So, which we'll get to Saquon here in a minute. Like I said, these top end guys, you can do it, but I mean, you're going to have to close your eyes and kind of bet on touchdowns for the
Yeah,
rest of your lineup.
absolutely. All right. Before we get to the late slate games, let's talk about the 20% off site wide offer at IDP Plus. You can go to idpplus.com/membership and get 20% off site wide with the promo code PROPS. That's PROPS. Uh, it's getting nut cutting time, right? It's almost time for the playoffs in daily or in season long fantasy. So you need all the edges you can get. So get access to all our tools, data, IDP articles, and don't miss out on the subscriber Discord. So again, idpplus.com/membership, promo code PROPS. So let's move on to the late afternoon slate, and we will start with Tennessee at the Los Angeles Chargers, the team with no home field advantage. 39-point over under in that game. Tennessee is a 7.5-point road underdog. Chargers implied total of 23 and a quarter. 15.75 implied total for Tennessee, which is just absolutely gross. Haven't heard anything about if Will Levis is going to play or not. Probably won't get any info until late since it's a late start. But some interesting things on the Chargers side. Is there anything you're interested in from Tennessee?
Calvin Ridley on FanDuel is one of these wide receivers if you need a punt real quick. I believe Mayo Boy is in the lineup this week. So
Is he?
if
Okay.
you could play Chargers defense, he's 5,700 over on DraftKings. Calvin Ridley is, and then 5,800 on FanDuel. Like I said, if you are paying up, Ridley's probably going to be one of these guys who's in your lineup. I really like the Justin Herbert double this week with Quentin Johnston and Lad McConkey. I need to apologize to you. A couple weeks ago, we talked about Lad McConkey, and I said the pass rate I didn't think was there, and then Lad McConkey went scorcher, so I apologize.
It's all
I've
good.
I
It's all good, brother.
but Tennessee has been pretty decent as far as the defensive line goes. It just the secondary has just been kind of abysmal. So Justin Herbert has been really good this year, and it seems like the Chargers are kind of tuning up the pass rate is up. This is not the normal run them to death Chargers. So I think Justin Herbert can get there. If you double stack him with Quentin Johnston and Lad McConkey, it opens up a lot on this slate, and you're not losing a lot of projection either. Justin Herbert doubles will open up the high end running backs. Like you can fit two or three, like James Cook, Aaron Jones, and say like James Conner. You can fit all three of those guys in, and it makes it work, and you're not losing so much projection. Um, I like Herbert this week. He's probably going to be one of my higher owned quarterbacks. And if you
He's
need to
so
bring
cheap.
back, yeah, that's the problem. And if you get 20 points out of him, I mean, I think he can go for much more. But
Yeah.
um, 19, 24, it's 27, 32, 39, 34, 27 attempts over the last 5 games. So this is not
Ever
the,
since the bye. Since the bye, they've been like wide
yeah,
open passing.
this is not the 15 to 18 attempt Chargers anymore. And if people are still thinking that, they're wrong. J.K. Dobbins, I don't think this is the best matchup for him, but we've seen him get there a couple times. Chargers defense has been really good. They're giving up no points, and just kind of wild to see, especially watching all that Brandon Staley Chargers from back in the day. That defense was just a abomination. But Chargers defense is in play. They end up being more pricey. I believe the fourth highest over on FanDuel at 4,800,
They're
and
the
then over
highest
on
on DK.
I was going to say they are very 3,800 over on DK. So it's tough to get there, but I do like the Chargers onslaught today. There's probably going to be one of the few weeks this season that I'm going to play it comfortably. And like I said, it opens up a lot. So I like Justin Herbert a lot. Seems like we both do.
Yep.
Only other guy, Will Dissly. If you're punting at tight end, he ends up 3,100 over on DraftKings, and he ends up in the Hunter Henry price range over on FanDuel, I believe, at 5,300. If you're trying to punt, want some correlation, that's fine, I guess. It's not for me, but I do think he's going to get a couple clicks today.
Yeah, the Chargers defense are like in a vacuum, just my favorite defense of the week this week, and it's like not even close. So I almost want to build like some contrarian lineups where I just start with the Chargers defense and work up from there.
Yeah.
It's I really want to play them, but they are so expensive. I guess I would do it on Fan. Like I'm not doing it on DK where they're the highest priced defense, but on FanDuel where they're the 4th highest defense at 4,800, I can kind of see that. I think there's a chance if you're playing against Will Levis, there's always a chance for a pick six, maybe multiple. So, and I wouldn't mind stacking them with J.K. Dobbins in a game where this just becomes a blowout and Dobbins becomes the kind of salt the game away guy. So, I don't mind that, or it just falls into the. I like you said, I don't love the matchup. Tennessee's very good against the run in general, but this is a game where I could just see it getting, West Coast trip for Tennessee. I could just see it getting completely out of hand for them, and Dobbins being kind of the salt away guy. So I wouldn't mind. I think I want to build a lineup that just starts with J.K. Dobbins and the Chargers and just kind of builds out from there. And Herbert is, because he's so cheap, he's like right there with Purdy as one of my 2 favorite quarterbacks this week.
Yep, I agree.
All right, let's move on to Philly and Dallas. I think this is the national TV game today.
Yay.
Why? Yeah, this is going to be an absolute blowout with no Dak and an injured CeeDee Lamb. 43.5 point total. Like if Dallas was healthy, this game would probably be close to 50, if not over 50. Philly 7.5 point road favorite over a division rival. So 25.5 point implied total for Philly. 18 for Dallas with Cooper Rush, we assume, starting a quarterback. I think this game comes down to is, how do you think Philly's going to win? How bad do you think Philly's going to win? So how are you going about this one?
I tried very hard to play Hurts, A.J. Brown, and Devonta Smith in lineups and kind of fade the Saquon Barkley. It's I think you can do 2. I do not think you can do 3. So you got to pick your poison there. Cowgirls secondary has just been terrible. I mean, they have been horrendous this year. This whole defense, the Mike Zimmer experiment, maybe he should have just stayed retired. I don't know. I shouldn't be too harsh on the guy. I was going to say something. I'm going to leave it alone.
Losing Micah Parsons has been tough.
Yeah, which I believe they get him back today. I don't think it matters much at this rate. But Saquon is the guy we're going to have a conversation around. He ends up being the running back on both sites, I believe. 8,300 on DraftKings, and then on FanDuel, he ends up being 9,600. I'll be honest with you. I know the matchup is great for him. Cowboys have been bludgeoned on the ground. If I need $200, I'd rather play McCaffrey. I feel comfortable saying that. I don't know if that's hot takey. I'm not trying to be, but I'd rather play this through Jalen Hurts, and that's my way of getting contrarian. But I don't think Saquon Barkley's ownership's getting past like 15%, so I don't think it's tough because he's expensive. If you're playing the Hurts side, you get the tush push. If he takes away 2 of Saquon's touchdowns, that's been a very real thing. I know they have very similar touchdowns, both Saquon and Jalen Hurts do, but you watch a game and it seems like, oh, they get to the 2-yard line, it's over. It's Jalen Hurts time. So it's just a great spot for Philadelphia overall. I'm leaning the Hurts side to get contrarian. We see that he can have these like 25, 30-point games, and it's setting up right here for him. If you need a bring back, honestly, on DraftKings, I don't hate Rico Dowdle if he gets dump offs from Cooper Rush, and that's the way he gets there. Normally, I would say like Jake Ferguson, but I don't trust it, and I'm not playing CD Lamb. He's hurt. Seems like he's going to play, but I hate this game environment for him.
Yeah, it's like I want to be interested in Jalen Tolbert, but he's just not that cheap. So I can't get there with Cooper Rush. If Dak was there, I'd be interested. I kind of agree with you in that I think Saquon might end up being kind of contrarian this week, just because he is so expensive. There is the concern about the tush push, right? And in a week with really tight pricing, I could see people kind of shying away from Barkley, even if he is the best kind of on paper player of the slate this week. So, yeah, like I mentioned, I don't have enough exposure to him in best ball, so I am kind of forcing it in DFS. So yeah, I guess I'm kind of hoping that he does become a little bit contrarian, and he doesn't have just the massive ownership.
Yeah, I mean the solver's projecting him kind of around 10%. So
Okay,
it's
yeah, I'm happy with that. If that's his ownership, I'm completely fine with that.
It's about 7% on FanDuel, and then ownership is 16% on DraftKings. I'll believe that one when I see it. Just because DraftKings is so tight this week. You do not have any
Right.
way of getting around that. So, but like I said, I think if you're playing like the Hurt stuff, I think you can only afford one wide receiver.
Yep.
Instead of doing the double, and it's probably better that way. Just hope that Jalen Hurts gets like a tush push, and then only one wide receiver kind of goes off there. So
Yeah, like you said, I don't mind just starting Jalen Hurts by himself, hoping for a couple tush pushes and split the touchdowns evenly between AJ Brown and Devonta Smith and or Dallas. I'm not interested in Dallas Goedert, but I can see it. But yeah, I don't mind just playing Hurts naked in this game either.
No, I don't hate that as well. So before we
I don't
move
think you
on,
can do it with. I would love to do it with Barkley, but I don't think you can afford to do both Hurts and Barkley.
no, it's gets very tight very quickly. So before we move on, we got a couple comments here. Gary, as always, appreciate you tuning in. And then we got a question from Mr. OK here, or Mrs. But we got CMC, Bears, and Adams. I'm assuming Devonte, or Saquon Barkley, Pats, and Garrett Wilson. Me personally, I'm going to lean Barkley, but uh, I think Garrett Wilson will have a bigger day than Devontae Adams, and I think Patriots defense could set up having a better day than the Bears, and then Barkley and CMC kind of equal themselves out. But that's just me.
I agree. I do prefer Barkley to CMC slightly, but yeah, everybody after the Devonta Adams trade, I think everybody thought that it was just going to be all Adams, and Garrett Wilson was going to fade into the background. It's been the exact opposite. It's been all Garrett Wilson, and that's not like Adams has been irrelevant. He's getting like 6, 7, 8 targets a game, but it's like Garrett Wilson just keeps getting double-digit targets, so he's the guy there. And yeah, I like him quite a bit this week. So yeah, I agree with you. I like the Barkley Pats Wilson side.
Good deal. And then one more. Yep, we got Gary in here. Appreciate you tuning in. And then one more question. We got start one for Tank Dell, DeAndre Hopkins, Harrison Jr., or Calvin Ridley. I'm going to eliminate two of them. I'm going to eliminate Ridley and Harrison Jr. Marvin Harrison has been the most unreliable wide receiver on God's green earth. So comes from DeAndre Hopkins or Tank Dell. It seems like Nico Collins is playing, and it's a nice matchup against Detroit, but that's on Sunday night. Gets kind of goofy. I think the safe play here is DeAndre Hopkins, but it would be between those two.
Yeah, I agree. I don't like Dell at all against Detroit. Like they got Brian Branch covering the slot, and he's really good. Probably going to be pissed off after getting ejected last week against the Packers. So, yeah, I don't like Dell at all this week, especially assuming that Nico's going to start. If we're talking DFS, like I don't mind Harrison in tournaments just because I think he's going to be really low owned, and you do have the explosion potential with him. But yeah, if you're talking like redraft or just lineup setting non DFS, then yeah, I think Hopkins is the safest play here.
Yeah. So one more from the Woolly Mammoth. CMC over 65 rushing yards. It's not the best matchup, but I would hit that. I would hit the over on that. I'm in on CMC this week. So
I am too. I just wonder if most of his production comes through the passing. Like I'm concerned that if it gets into a game script where they just kind of blow out the Bucks through the air, if it, Debo and Kittle early, and CMC just gets a lot like through the air, then I could see them like using Jordan Mason in the second half to kind of push that game out of reach. So I'd be a little bit more nervous than you are, but if I had to pick one, I guess I would lean over 65. But remember, they're still a good run defense. Like their secondary is awful. That's the only concern I would have is that it's such a pass funnel defense in Tampa Bay that I could see there just not being enough attempts for him to get to 65, and Jordan Mason kind of taking over the second half and not kind of trying to push him too hard in a game script where he's just kind of irrelevant in the second half of the game. But
right,
that would be my concern there.
I get that. I'm still going to lean over. I think CMC
smashed and it's totally fair.
So, but I mean, Vita Vea is a scary opposition on the other side there.
So yeah, Pachuco, thank you for checking out the show. Absolutely appreciate that. And got one more from Dylan Fink here. Full PPR, different leagues. Starts it 1 RB, ugly Akers and Rodriguez. Yes, that's ugly. 1 QB, Baker or Kyler. 1 tight end, Taysom and Ertz, and 1 flex and tight end, Pearsall, Odunze, or Ferguson and Hunter Henry.
I'm
missing that. Oh, Hunter Henry. My bad. Yeah. All right, let's start from the top. Akers or Chris Rodriguez, I assume.
I'm gonna say Cam Akers. I think he is like. I'm gonna check. He's gotten like 8 points. He's almost kind of gotten there. The game script that can get away from him. 6.3 points and 11.7 against Buffalo. 5-9. So he's kind of got a floor for these two guys. Rodriguez got some run though. Last time Brian Robinson Jr. was out, he had 19 points against the Jets. But it's I'm going to lean Cam Akers here and hope that they don't run Aaron Jones completely into the ground. But I think if you're shooting for upside, maybe. I mean, he had 2 touchdowns, so that's kind of the Rodriguez deal there.
Yeah, I would say Rodriguez just because I think there's less competition for opportunities, but I just think the game script for Minnesota is going to be so much better that probably have to go Akers. I think if you're shooting for ceiling, maybe Rodriguez. If you just want, I think Akers has got the better floor, so that maybe it depends on what you're looking for there.
Yeah,
quarterback, Baker or Kyler.
It's brutal because Kyler has been the most frustrating player on planet. I'm not scared of the Jets defense, but I mean, they like to run the ball and they've been very good with it with James Conner.
Yep.
So that's been the problem. Baker's still been slinging it. I want to check out Baker's stuff real quick. Because, I mean,
he's been good even without Evans and Godwin.
Yeah. And they're going to keep doing it. I think I'm going to say Baker.
I think you have to, just because, like you said, that the Cardinals can get run heavy like they did last week. Like they just obliterated the Bears, and it was all on the ground, right? They give a touchdown rush to Trey McBride, so I think that's a really frustrating part for Kyler, and that's a game script where we'll get to that in a second. I don't think that this is going to be a go off game for the Cardinals, so right. I think you kind of have to go Baker there. Taysom or Ertz?
I'll go Taysom here. It's one of the last guys remaining. And then 1 flex and 1 tight end, Pearsall, Odunze, Ferguson, or Hunter Henry. I'm going to go Odunze and Hunter Henry.
I agree with that. 100%.
So
as much as I kind of like Pearsall as a cheap guy in DFS this week, just because of the matchup, but yeah, I much prefer Odunze. He's in a bunch of my lineups this week, just as kind of the pay down receiver guy.
Yep. So, but let's see. We'll get these last 2 games taken care of real quick, and then we'll answer the rest of the questions here. So, next game, last one of the afternoon slate: New York Jets at the Arizona Cardinals. Can't really figure this game out too well, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, Jets are a 1.5 point road favorite in this one. So 46.5 point implied total, which is a little interesting considering that it's the Jets who play low total games usually, but
Right.
bounced back last week against Houston. So 24 point implied total for the Jets, 22.5 for Arizona, who's really kind of struggled at home this year. So what do you think about this one? I think this is an interesting game.
It's I've seen people excited to play Aaron Rodgers. I don't know what drugs they are taking, but I'd be happy to
I
take some.
agree.
I don't mind playing Garrett Wilson. I don't mind playing Devontae Adams, but I'm not pairing him with Aaron Rodgers.
No.
That makes no sense to me. I'd rather play anybody else. I'd rather play McCorkle at his price. Drake May. I just no thank you. Even if he gets 2 touchdowns, I still don't think he gets there. But running backs go Brees Hall. Uh, Arizona's defense has been pretty bad all year long. I know they've kind of tightened it up a little bit. They haven't played many good offenses the last couple weeks, it seems like. But James Conner's really interesting because this Arizona Cardinals team has been really good running the ball. So kind of want to lean into the 2 running backs there. McBride is okay. It's don't want to pay up for him. I know he had the touchdown last week on the handoff. Should have had another one if Kyler just would have grown a couple more inches and saw him. But it's I'd rather just kind of pay down a little bit at tight end. So I don't love this game as much as other people do. I think Kyler on this slate is interesting though because of his upside. If he runs around like he has and gets those scrambling yards, and then Marvin Harrison Jr. is a wild card, but he has been so bad this year that I can't stomach it personally. But I'm just going to try. I think I'm going to have a lot of James Conner today, and then Brees I'll mix and match here and there. But I think I'm going to have a lot of James Conner. James Conner I believe is in my cash game lineup today.
I don't get it with Rodgers at all. I mean, he's more expensive than Justin Herbert, who I like quite a bit better.
Yeah.
He's in the same price range as like both Drake May and Caleb Williams. I would rather play either one of them over Rodgers. Like I could easily see this game just being a Brees Hall game. Like Arizona's run
Yep.
defense is still pretty terrible. So
Yep.
I could see this. I don't know how you start Rodgers. Um, Even coming off, he had a great game last week on Thursday, a week ago Thursday against Houston, but uh, I don't like Rodgers at all. I went on a rant last week while you were gone on Trey McBride. I'm desperately wanting him to score a touchdown and just begging him to score a touchdown. He did, but it was on the ground. So, all right, you did what I asked for, so I got to give you credit on that. But and yeah, like I said, I kind of like Marvin Harrison just as a tournament option. I think his ownership is going to be so low this week. And he does have that, he has that upside of a guy who could, put up a couple touchdowns and just kind of win a slate for you. And he's not super expensive. His price is coming down. So he's right around Mooney, which I don't necessarily like. I would rather play Mooney, but I think I just want to have some exposure to Harrison, just at least one lineup, just because he's not as expensive. He's not a top flight guy anymore. Like he earlier in the year, he was like a top 4 or 5 guy, and that just never made sense. So his price is coming down, and um, like he's cheaper than Brian Thomas Jr. this week, and I don't like Brian Thomas Jr. at all with Mac Jones. So I just want to have a little bit of exposure to Marvin Harrison.
I don't hate it. Like I said, this game, like I said, I've spent an entire week. I don't understand the Rodgers love. He's going to have ownership. He's going like people are going to play him. Hope to God they get. I mean, he had 221 yards last week and 3 touchdowns. He scored 21 points. Like, I mean, can you not find that elsewhere? I think you and I could pull that off. I just
Exactly.
Garrett Wilson is a fun one for me. He'd be my preference between him and Devonta Adams. Other
Yep.
than that, I don't think I love this game as much as others. I'd rather play some different stuff. So that's really about it for me. I be quite honest, I couldn't tell you who wins this game. I'm kind of
I couldn't either. No.
it's so that's really all I got here.
Yeah, I am kind of hoping this game goes off for the Jets, just because, like I said, I'm not getting in best ball. I'm not getting any high picks, so I've got a ton of Brees Hall and Garrett Wilson. So picking around the turn. So
Right.
I do hope that would be very good for my best ball shares. But other than that, I'm not super high on this game for DFS. All right, one more game for FanDuel for the Sunday night slate. That is Detroit at Houston. Lions just absolutely probably the best team in football right now. 49-point over under in this game. Lions 3.5-point road favorite. 26 and a quarter implied total. 22.75 for Houston. Interesting game. Probably a game that looked sexier when the season came out, when the schedule came out, but it doesn't look so great right now. But how you looking at this one on the FanDuel slate?
I know Jared Goff has not been there this year as far as production goes, as far as volume. But I mean, sets up really nice against Houston's secondary. That's been kind of iffy at times. They've given up I think the second most touchdowns to wide receivers this year. I know the defense overall is decent, but sets up nice for them. Jameson Williams, I believe, is back after his
Yep.
suspension. He's one of these like mid K wide receivers on FanDuel with like Jordan Addison. If both those guys hit, you get the same production as you would as paying up for one of the top wide receivers. That's kind of the way I'm playing it. I'm definitely playing this game on FanDuel. I think this one has a shot to being like the highest point game of the week. And then on the other side, I'm very interested in Nico Collins. Before he left, he was doing 125 yards and a touchdown like it was nothing. So Houston desperately needs him back. Joe Mixon is interesting. I don't think I can afford him. He's a great. Nobody's going to play him because of his price. He's on the Sunday night game. Gets overlooked. But and then Tank Dell, I think, will have a little bit of ownership on FanDuel because of his price. Seems like he's getting a little bit healthier, but with Nico back, I would rather lean into Nico at lower ownership. And then the only other thing for me, I'm not going to play the Detroit running backs. It just it gets tough for me to fit those guys, but I think especially David Montgomery, who's been a behemoth this year, I think he sets up nicely again. But it's hard to get to this game because of price. Sunday night game, I think it gets overlooked, but I think it's a good spot for both these teams.
Yeah, I've kind of faded this game just because everyone in it is so expensive, and you really got to
Yep.
pick. Like you got to kind of go out on a limb and pick which one or two is actually going to go off. I'm a little bit, actually, I'm quite a bit more reluctant to start Nico than you are, in that I look at his price and I go, I could have Debo for $500 less, and I would
Yep.
much rather do that. So yeah, he's really hard for me. So coming off the injury against a really good Detroit secondary. Obviously, I do like the game script. I think they're going to have to throw a lot, which is why I don't like Joe Mixon, because I don't think, I think they'll try to run the ball, but Detroit's got one of the best run defenses. So I don't think he's going to be able to kind of do what he's been doing all year. So yeah, I don't love this game script at all for Houston. I think this is a really bad matchup for them. And I don't like Tank Dell, like we talked about earlier. I think it's a bad
Yeah.
matchup for him as well, without Steph Diggs to kind of take some pressure off. Don't like that. So I just don't like the Houston side at all. And then Detroit, it's like, yeah, you got to pick your poison. It's like, what? It's like, do you want to pay up for Amon Ra when you could just get AJ Brown for $100 cheaper? And it's like, even if these guys go off, it's like it's hard to see any of these guys actually actively going off when there's so many of them who could have good games. So
Yep.
yeah, maybe like you said, maybe take just Jared Goff and go Jared Goff naked at quarterback. I don't mind that, but it's just so hard to pay up for these guys when it's really hard for any of them to kind of dominate production on the Detroit side.
Yeah. It gets very expensive. It's a very hard game to stack because there's no cheap options
Right.
anywhere outside of Jameson Williams, who isn't even cheap. He's just like not
Yeah,
expensive.
exactly.
So it's probably like I said, I'm probably playing a decent amount of Jameson Williams, this mid tier wide receivers, but the rest of it having a hard time getting to. But I'd really like to play Jared Goff today if I can.
Yeah, I like that call. I think he may be probably the best play of this game. Before we get to flag plants, let's hit a couple other questions here. OK says, thoughts on Eckler producing as much as Aaron Jones today?
Hard for me to see it. I mean, I think Aaron Jones smashes, but that's Aaron Jones. The comment below, it says other mid 6K running backs. I'm gonna guess that's a DraftKings question, so let me pull that up real quick. Um, Give me just a second.
Yeah, let me
Maybe.
hide the comment real quick so we can show it.
Let's see.
There's Aaron
So
Jones right there.
there he is. So 6,700, Kareem the Dream. I'd rather have Aaron Jones. James Conner is interesting. Swift is interesting. Outside of that, though, I think
What is
Aaron
Isaac
Jones
Garendo doing up there? What is
is
that?
just saving their ass over on DraftKings. So, I mean, it's there, and there's nobody below unless you're playing like the Rashad White or Bucky Irving. I'm not playing Tank Bigsby. It gets very ugly. So it's Aaron Jones for me, and then outside of Eckler, there really is nobody. There's no salary relief. There's no help. There's no hope at running back. You're just going to have to
Nope.
pay the price for him.
Yeah, like I said, talked about Jalen Warren earlier. He's as far down as I'm going at running back. I do have a couple lineups with Eckler, just because I like him as kind of a ball hog in that backfield. So I think he can get a lot of opportunity both in the pass game and run game. But yeah, I definitely prefer Aaron Jones if you can get up to that salary. All right. Question from MD. Highest scoring game today. I think you got to go with San Fran and Tampa, right? Well, I'm going to change that. Because I'm just afraid that Tampa just doesn't score at all, and it's all San Francisco. So I'm going to say Minnesota Jacksonville.
Yeah, it's I would say San Francisco and Tampa Bay. I think they can go back and forth. I think Atlanta and New Orleans is sneaky. Atlanta's gotten in these like wild, goofy,
Yeah,
don't make any sense games here. The only other one that I will say, I think the Bills can put 40 today on the Colts.
okay.
So it's not going back and forth as far as the highest scoring game, but I do think that Buffalo, even though they got some injuries, I just think they beat the absolute bejesus out of the Colts today. So
I
that's
like the call.
that's another one. So
I'm cool with that. Let's go to Pachuco TTV. Who won this trade? Hill and James Cook for Harrison Jr. and Brees Hall.
I will go Hill and James Cook just because Harrison Jr. hasn't really gotten there. I know Tyreek has not been the best, and James Cook's probably a notch below Brees Hall, but I just don't think Harrison Jr. kind of keeps up as much as Hill does. And then you got James Cook, who's been really good this year, so I'll go on that side.
I'm going to take the dynasty point of view on this, and I'm going to say Brees Hall and Marvin Harrison Jr. I think Harrison Jr. could eventually get there. And if you look at this Miami offense, like they're just using the running backs as receivers, and that's great for Devon Achane and kind of good for Mostert, but it's really kind of just knocked down Hill and Waddle. So,
Yep.
and yeah, I think Brees Hall is a clear step above Cook, and I think Harrison Jr. could produce what Tyreek Hill does the rest of the years. I'm going to take that side, even though it's a little bit of a dynasty outlook, but I think Brees Hall is just the safer. I think he's the best player in the deal, so I'm going to kind of lean that side.
I think that's fair. So,
all right, one more from OK here. San Fran stack Purdy and Debo, or Purdy, Debo, and CMC for DK high dollar.
I'd rather have CMC in there. It depends on how bad the rest of your lineup is, but I think, Purdy can throw it to CMC for the touchdown, and then Purdy gets there too. So that's my thought process. It's probably going to be a lot easier to play just Debo, but if you can make CMC work without destroying the rest of your lineup, I'd definitely add him in there. Like, say, if you're playing CMC over Saquon, if that makes sense. Yeah, so if you can make it work and your lineup doesn't get absolutely destroyed, I'd say CMC in there too.
My problem is like how many points can San Francisco realistically score? And I think that's a lot, but if it comes like total onslaught, like we mentioned earlier, if it comes, if they get up early, they're up big at halftime. Is it just a Jordan Mason second half and they're just kind of easing CMC, trying to ease him in as much as they can and just using Jordan Mason to kind of take all those ugly, slams into Vita Vea that they're going to have to run to in the second half. So I think it really, if you think Tampa Bay can kind of keep up and make this a game where San Fran has to play for 4 quarters and keep throwing for 4 quarters, then yeah, I'd definitely like to include CMC. But if you think this game becomes a blowout and Tampa can't keep up and San Fran doesn't have to throw the entire time, then I would leave CMC out. But it just depends on how you feel that game's going to go.
Yeah, I will say this: $100 more for Alvin Kamara, Bijan Robinson, if you want to get away from the CMC stuff and it doesn't totally tank your lineup because they have similar ceilings.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing with CMC is that like there are so many guys in that price range that I really like. Like you said, I like Bijan a lot, like Kamara a lot, uh, and I don't mind paying up for. Like, he's only $200 less than Saquon Barkley, and
Right.
so yeah, if you want to kind of get off that game, I can see. But like if you're in high dollar, you need to differentiate yourself, and obviously Purdy, Debo, CMC. I don't think anybody's going super stack on the Niners, and if they do, it would probably be Purdy, Debo, Kittle, or something like that. So
Or one of the
I
cheaper
think that's
wide
going to be
receivers.
Jawan Jennings or something like that. So yeah, I think that's going to be a very. I think people are going to look at the salaries on those three guys and say I can't put all three in the same lineup. So I think he would be. It's a fairly contrarian option in high dollar.
Yeah. So, um, like I said, I'm going to lean CMC, and I guess I'll kick off flag plants and just kind
Let's
of go
do
with
it.
the
Let's
notion
hit
there.
flag plants.
My flag plant's going to be Christian McCaffrey. So I think that he is going to. Let me fix this real quick. There we go. Um, for what he does on the ground, I don't think a lot of people are going to play him. They're going to be scared. They want to wait a week. I'm not here to wait. I'm here to win. So Christian McCaffrey is going to be one of my flag plants. I'm going to try to. My choice is playing him over Saquon today. I'm kind of contrarian, trying to get different there, but that's McCaffrey's going to be my first flag plant. I'm not scared.
I think your second flag plant is going to be my first, so I'm going to let you have that
Okay.
one. I'm going to start with Darnell Mooney in the Atlanta game. Like we said earlier, I'd normally like to hit slot receivers against New Orleans, but with Marshawn Lattimore, I think that secondary is just completely decimated. So as much as I do like Bijan in this game, I think Mooney's going to get there early, and with the injury to Drake London, I think they're going to want to, if they don't need to kind of use him as much, I think his target share could be down a little bit. So I do like Darnell Mooney quite a bit this week.
Yeah. Darnell Mooney's been good too. That's one of these wide
Absolutely.
receivers that's been nobody really thought of before the season. Everybody thought, oh, he might have a game or two, but I mean, he's quietly gotten there this year. So my second flag plant I talked about earlier, Jordan Addison. I think he has a
Yep.
monster game today. So I really like him. I talked about this pocket of mid-tier wide receivers. You're going to have to find one that hits big, and I think he's the one today.
Yeah, that was where I was going, but I'm going to let you have that one. My second is Debo Samuel. I don't think that Tampa pass defense can keep up with San Francisco, and I think it's a Debo game. Even with the oblique, I'm not super concerned about that. They've had the week off for him to get healthy, hopefully get over the pneumonia, hopefully get over the oblique injury. So I think the passing game runs through him, and I just want as much. Like we said, Tampa's off next week, so this is your last chance to attack that pass defense for a couple of weeks. So if you look at the top receivers, he's much cheaper. He's cheaper than Devonta Smith on FanDuel. So yeah, he's cheaper. I'd rather have Debo than CeeDee Lamb, and Lamb's much more expensive. I'd rather have him. I like him. I think he's safer than AJ Brown, and he's cheaper than AJ Brown. So if you look, I think that's where the elite wide receiver tier ends. And I would maybe include Garrett Wilson, but I think at his price, I love Debo this week. So he's going to be my second flag plant.
I
One more
think that
question here from Chris Bork: Stroud or Drake May this week?
man, I would say Drake May, but I mean his matchup's not great. But I mean Drake May is he's got like a lot of running juice to him. I don't know if a lot of people realize that. I know he got the lazy comps to Josh Allen, and I hate that when they do that to these quarterbacks because I don't think it's fair. But I mean he's been running a lot. I think Drake May's safer. C.J. Stroud's not been good this year. Bobby Sloak, as far as offensive coordinator goes, not been impressive. Probably wish that he would have gotten a head coaching job last year and maybe this offense be a little better. It's tough. Ugh. I'm gonna go Drake May, but I don't feel comfortable with that.
I agree. I was going to say, is it crazy that I would rather start Drake May this week? But I think I would. It's a terrible matchup for Stroud. Detroit's defense is really good. Their pass defense has been much better than I think anyone expected. with those rookies back there. So yeah, I just think he gives you the rushing floor that Stroud just does not, and I don't think Stroud's going to be able to run against that or want to run against that front. So yeah, I think I like Drake May.
So I think that's fair. Like I said, if your team is just like absolutely shooting for upside, maybe Stroud. Hope that he gets the passing touchdowns. But like I said, it just doesn't seem like both of us are either very hot on CJ Stroud today. So it's
I'm not.
No, I'm not either. So
we had Wooly Mammoth earlier saying that Tyrone Tracy was thinking it up and just had a long touchdown run. So patience, everybody. Patience. You got to wait for it to happen. All right. Before we go, Jameson, tell everyone where they can find you and what you got going on.
I'm over at Jameson Rules on the Twitter machine. Got Rider Dynasty with JJ Wenner and Joe Harlow every Thursday. Here every Sunday with you for DFS. It's really about it. So keep it pretty quiet right now.
Yeah, you can find me at the Joel Worth on both Twitter and on Blue Sky. So if you want a Twitter experience that doesn't include the trolls or all the negativity, check out Blue Sky. It's been pretty cool so far. A lot of people have been coming over there since the events of Tuesday. We'll stay non-political and just say that. But it's a pretty cool environment. So check that out. You don't even need an invite anymore. I think you can just go on there and sign up. So enjoying that quite a bit. Our buddy JJ Wenner's on there. So a lot of cool people over on Blue Sky. So check that out. And then you can find me doing the best ball show here on the IDP Plus network. Didn't do a show this week, like I said, because I've been under the weather and haven't had a chance and been able to talk for 20 minutes without going into a coughing fit. So that'll be coming back this week. And the DFS article, Top Plays, will be coming back this week as well. So until next week for week 11, appreciate you guys checking out the show, and we will see you for week 11 next Sunday.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.